All right. So as you do that, we will go ahead and introduce our panelists. So joining us today is Dr. Nora Lamartine from the Médicos del Centro Family Medicine Residency Program in Española, New Mexico. Dr. Lamartine, could you please give us a brief overview of the Médicos del Centro Residency Program?
Sure. It also looks like Dr. Kovich is on too. So Médicos del Centro is a rural program in Española, New Mexico. So if you're not from New Mexico, that's about 30 minutes north of Santa Fe. We're a 4-4-4 program. You do your OB, emergency, outpatient clinic, all in Española. And we have partnered with the residency program in Santa Fe for your adult inpatient experiences.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Also joining us, as Dr. Lamartine pointed out, is Dr. Heather Kovich, who is the program director for the Shiprock UNM Family Medicine Residency Program. Dr. Kovich, can you give a brief overview of your program?
Sure. Hi. And I see Kathy here from the main UNM program as well. So I am Heather Kovich, Shiprock Family Medicine Residency Program. Our program is what's called a 222, but it's a rural training track. And so our residents do their first year at the University of New Mexico with the main University of New Mexico Family Medicine Residency Program in Albuquerque. And then they move to Shiprock, New Mexico, which is in the very northwest corner of the state on the Navajo Nation. And they do the second and third years with us here. Our hospital is part of the Federal Indian Health Service. So this is an IHS residency. All of our patients are Native American and primarily Navajo. Very rural. I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. All right. Also joining us, I believe, is Dr. Dolores Gomez from the Southern New Mexico Family Medicine Residency Program in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Dr. Gomez, can you please give a brief overview of your program?
Sure. Thank you, guys. Sorry, I'm coming on a little late and I'm going to have to sign off a little bit early as well. So I'm the program director at the Southern New Mexico Family Medicine Residency Program here in Las Cruces. We are currently a 10-10-10 program. So we take 10 residents per year. We've been around since 1996, and we've kind of transitioned from initially a 1+2 program. So started off as a small program of only 3 residents and have been able to grow since that time and have become our own standalone residency. And we do sponsor but we have 2 additional intern year classes that are here with us. Gerald Champion, or I'm sorry, Christus, I think is their name now. I don't know if Dr. Ortega is on, but Christus, which is in Alamogordo, New Mexico. So we take their 3 interns, and then they do some rotations with us during their second and third year. And then we hopefully will be part of the restart up of the Silver City program, hopefully in the coming hopefully year or so to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And finally, we have Dr. Kathy Cheng joining us from the University of New Mexico Family Medicine Residency Program. Dr. Cheng, can you give a brief overview of that program?
Sure. Thanks for having us as well. And we are the main campus program in Albuquerque at University of New Mexico, where we have 14 residents that start every year that stay there for all 3 years. And then we also have our 1+2 friends, 6 per starting intern class that then do their second and third year in Santa Fe, and then the 2 interns per year from Shiprock that then go to finish year 2 and 3 at Shiprock. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Have I missed anyone? Leslie?
I think that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Unless anyone
Excellent.
else snuck in.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for sharing that information about your programs. And I think without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into the question portion. So Leslie, please kick us off.
Yeah, so we're gonna pose the questions to one particular program director, and then after they answer, if anyone else has any additional comments about their program or wants to answer, there'll be time for that. So the first question is to Dr. Lamartine. What extent does research play a significant role in the selection process for family medicine residency programs? And what specific types and duration of volunteer work are typically sought by such programs?
Well, we use a scoring rubric, and for our program in particular, research actually doesn't play a huge part of the score when we review your applications. So we like to see that you have had some sort of experience in research. You definitely don't need to be an author on a paper, but having a poster presentation or working on a large presentation to a bigger audience are great places to start. Volunteering and sort of extended periods where you've served in a leadership role play a much bigger part on our application. When we look at volunteer work, we're looking to see how long were you volunteering in whatever role, and did you take on some sort of leadership in that volunteer organization or in that position?
Great. Does anyone have any additional comments to add?
I would echo Dr. Lamartine's emphasis on more of like the, are you engaged in your community, right? And then how much did you gain out of that experience? If it was, a bunch of shorter experiences, but you got a breadth of experience and perspective, great. As long as you can kind of talk about that, lessons learned and so forth. But there's also, it's nice to see kind of longitudinal relationship building that people have over time, rather than just the one-off experiences.
Going to the next question, Dr. Gomez, from your perspective, what attributes define a competitive candidate for your program?
I think for us, one of our big emphasis is we're very mission driven. And I think our mission and our vision statement kind of express what we're looking for in a resident here. We have a strong emphasis on kind of social responsibility, or not responsibility, responsiveness and accountability. So very much community driven and being outward facing to our community. So we want providers who are looking for that experience. And then one of our other big emphasis is we like to be able to train and retain for Las Cruces or the southern part of the state. So if people are from the community, whether they grew up here or they went to college here, or are very much looking to stay in New Mexico, that's one of the things that we really look at as being kind of high on our rubric. And trying to match with us. So a lot of local ties is a big deal, and kind of that social mission kind of driven resident is what we're looking for.
Excellent. Does anyone else want to add to that?
I mean, I think overall, like, you're looking for somebody who you think is going to thrive in the environment that you have for residency there. And so for us, we're a very rural program. We want to know that people are going to be able to be happy and fulfilled in a setting like this. And that can look a lot of different ways. Like, there's not one particular applicant that you have to be, but if you have experience working in tribal or Native communities, if you come from a tribal or Native community, if you come from a rural area, or have experience living and working in a rural area, those are all things that will sort of clue us into, like, this will be a good, fit for you. It's interesting when I do my slideshow about the program, I often show the picture of intern orientation when my interns, when they come up here from UNM, they slaughter a sheep with our community. And that turns a ton of people off. But I show the pictures for a reason, which is if you're going to be happy here, this is the kind of community we live and work in. And this, you kind of have to be here for all of that. And so we want people who we think are going to be happy here, and that, it's a good fit. And we're not saying that that we necessarily just have to think that you're a good fit. We want you to also feel like it's a good fit as well.
I love that, Dr. Kovich. That's awesome. Next question here would be to you, Dr. Kovich. Could you elucidate on potential red flags that program directors may identify in applicants and provide guidance on how applicants can mitigate such concerns?
Sure. I mean, I think the second half of the question is sort of the easiest thing. And I think there are a number of red flags. There are very few deal breakers. And so, yeah, if somebody has failed a bunch of their coursework, if they've, had to repeat a whole year of medical school, if they've tried to take step 2 CK, 3 times and have had trouble passing it, those are all red flags. None of those are necessarily deal breakers, but the thing that you need to do is you need to be very upfront about what happened, why you think this happened, and why you feel like, for whatever it is, this won't be an impediment to you being successful in the future. And I think we're willing to read an explanation about just about anything, and we're certainly willing to hear the story. But it has to be dealt with in a mature way in which you take ownership and responsibility, or are willing to see that in broader context.
I would second that. If there's something that you feel like you should hide, don't do that. Do the opposite. Tell us about it. Explain what happened and what has changed since then.
I agree with that. And I think the other thing that helps within that, I really like reading people's personal statements. And when you see those little ticks of maybe repeating a year or having to take time away, there's growth within when those things happen, for whatever reason, loss of a family member, maybe you just couldn't get the information down. But that really builds in a personal statement to say, you know what, this happened to me and here's what I learned in that. And here's how I'm going to use that moving forward. I think really can build a really nice personal statement and be a big part of kind of explaining the red flags that really, I agree with Dr. Kovich, is I don't think they're ever deal breakers overall. I think they're just things that we want to have somebody be able to say, hey, this is what happened. And it's okay to be honest within that and kind of just be transparent.
All right, so moving on to the next question. Since the pandemic, we've seen virtual interviews become the norm, essentially, when it comes to residency interviews. So, Dr. Chang, what strategies can students employ to distinguish themselves effectively during these virtual Zoom interviews?
That's a great question, I think, because the programs are also trying to do the same thing, right? We're trying to give you a sense of, who we are, as a program, as the faculty, the residents, and kind of the feel of each program, and also New Mexico being like a smaller, out of the way place that people haven't already been through here, right? And get a feel for that. But I think the honesty and being able to having the essentially being yourself, and like, how do you get yourself into that relaxed frame so that you can just answer a question honestly, right? Rather than I know it's hard in the interview time frame to not feel like pressure. I have to put my best foot forward, and there's a lot of stress that goes on. I think just in the whole process itself. But what we're really looking for is, who are you as a person? Can you talk about your experiences? Like the things that maybe were things as reading your CV and reading your ERAS application and your personal statement that we're going to have questions about. Can you talk about those things like they were real, right?
I have actually a question for the other program directors. So we did 50-50 this year. We offered about 30 spots for in-person interviews and about 30 spots for virtual interviews. Are any of the rest of you doing? We really enjoyed the in-person interviews, and we felt like we asked people if they had never been to Shiprock or they didn't have any experience in a community like this. We gave them a little bit of money to sort of offset the cost of traveling here. But are any of the rest of you guys doing any in-person interviews?
We do all virtual interviews, and then we have an in-person open house.
We have stayed 100% virtual at this point. We've talked about maybe a second look or those kinds of things, but thus far we're just staying 100% virtual.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We just met about it yesterday, and I think we all felt like we wanted to do even skew the ratio more and offer more in-person spots and potentially even fewer virtual spots next time. Like we just felt like it was more, the people got a better sense of what it was like to be in a place like Shiprock by coming in person. That doesn't answer the question, but I just was curious.
I think also having questions like about the program that you're trying to understand more of yourself too, right? Like if it was just like it's just a standard interview that I'm here for, and I don't care what you tell me about your program because I'm not interested, like we can tell, right? And so having actually something more that you would like to know, since you have the captive audience in the moment as you're doing your interview, like what could you glean about that program from the person in front of you? I think that also shows interest. And we also
Yeah.
are
I mean, we
fully
get a lot of questions, like just to echo off of what Kathy was saying, we get a lot of questions that like clearly people have their list of like 5 questions that they can ask at any interview they go to. And those are fine. Like if we haven't answered that and we haven't given you the information that you need, like go ahead and ask those. But it definitely means something else if you ask a question that's very specific about this program, or even just shows that you've listened to the information that we've presented about the program and sort of reflecting that back, I think can be helpful.
I also really enjoy, I think those questions are another opportunity for us to tell you about yourself. So if there are certain things that you think you want to do with your career, it's okay for your mind to change later, but also if you're particularly interested in something, tell us about that so we can tell you how that works in our program and you can really suss out if it's the right place.
That is great advice. I'm going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to open this up to all of the program directors. Dr. Lamartine, you can go first because you're on my screen. This is a 2-part question. What are ways that what opportunities do residents get to engage in formal educational activities? And how does the program facilitate the development of teaching skills, of residents' teaching skills?
Okay. So I think with formal education, we're talking about lectures is how I'm going to take that to mean. So we do didactics on Wednesday afternoons, which I think is actually pretty common across all of us here. And we are not trying to focus on the same things you already learned in medical school. We're trying to use those education times to enhance what you have already learned. So more workshop oriented or nuanced towards applications of family medicine. Our program actually shares some of this time with the residency program in Santa Fe. And some of what we're sharing is simulation time at the Santa Fe Community College. The New Mexico Primary Care Training Consortium puts on didactics. And then they have a wonderful faculty member who does narrative medicine. So we share those experiences. As far as residents as teachers, so we have a partnership with Burrell and also with UNM, where our faculty will take medical students, and as part of that rotation, they're going to be with the residents in the continuity clinic. There's potential to expand that in the future, but that's primarily where that teaching of medical students will happen. I also like to take medical students with us to the hospital to deliver babies. I think that's one of the things that really stands out about family medicine. But I can't predict when or if that's going to happen when we have medical students.
Great. Dr. Gomez, would you like to share your educational activities in your program?
Yeah, like Dr. Lamartine said, also we have our formal didactic sessions on Monday afternoons. That's dedicated time for the residents to only be in that setting so they get that education. We always try to emphasize, though, that you guys are learning the whole 3 years that you're here. And also emphasize that sitting in a lecture room for 4 hours isn't where you get your best education. You get it when you're with your patients, when you're learning from your attendings on rounds. So we try to remember that. It's hard because our brains are hardwired because we went through college and medical school sitting in a classroom style, but really knowing that you're getting that education all the time. But that's where the formal piece is. We also, every morning on our inpatient family medicine service, have a brief, what we call, so we kind of go over the patients, but we, to try to encourage that lifelong learning and that self-directed learning, we have the residents do 1-minute teaching topics on the patients that they're seeing. It's not meant to be a really long session. It's really just meant to be 1 minute. Hey, my patient was CHF. I was trying to figure out what the right drugs are to use, and they teach us all. So the resident is directed in that teaching, which then that goes to the second part of it, is like, how do you get a resident to learn how to teach? So that's one way to do it. We do pair them with our medical students. And then we try to do, when they're trying to transition from their intern year into their second year, we have a few little skill sets that we do that we call Resident 101, which kind of goes back more to like, how do I deal with maybe somebody who isn't completing their duties at the same time? Because other than just having you guys teach things, it's like, how do you deal with those situations sometimes when there's a difficult patient or those kinds of things, and how do I teach that to my juniors? So those are kind of the main things that that we try to do, but make sure that the residents are involved with a lot of that, including our grand round sessions where they will be providing the case presentations and those kinds of things to give them that skill set as they kind of grow in their 3 years.
Excellent. I see Dr. Chang on my screen next. Would you, or Dr. McLean, I see her here as well. Would either of you like to talk about formal educational activities at your program?
Yeah, I can say that similarly, we have, the standard didactic times with every Wednesday afternoon is a protected resident didactic seminar session. Some of them are in person, some of them are workshops. Last week was just like the anatomy, orthopedics, like injection practice. But we also on our inpatient and MCH service does differently depending on which service there is. But for inpatient, I think it's an example of trying to have the seniors learn in the moment, learn the formal skills of teaching and putting together didactics in a way that is kind of to the point and like a 10-15 minute blurb. But we actually have residents that have helped and faculty as well build these little clips cards that sort of prompts the most current information on like a set of common diagnoses, and then we have a like a month-long calendar, so that hopefully as the interns go through the first year of inpatient, that they'll have hit kind of the different topics, and they do that in the morning for 10-15 minutes before they run off and start rounding, so that the night team and the day team get that. And then in the afternoons we also have a set like 1 p.m. 20-30 minute didactic time as well, that varies.
Awesome. Dr. Kovich, would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say that's particularly different than what everybody else has said. We have Wednesday afternoon didactics. That's sort of the quote unquote protected time for teaching. We have a ton of medical students here. We generally have 2 students every month from somewhere in the country, sometimes more than that. So the residents work with the medical students on the inpatient service, sometimes in clinic, and then on our street medicine service, the residents are there with the students as well. And so they're doing a fair amount of teaching of medical students and kind of working through things that way. I mean, a lot of what we do sounds very similar to what UNM does because we copied it from UNM when we started our program, and we actually have like the same list of like inpatient topics that you have to do mini teaching presentations during your inpatient months. So I think the only thing we do that's maybe a little bit different is we have like a Native American sort of Native health curriculum as well. And so the traditional healer does some teaching. We have some other like sort of community experts and things that come in and do some teaching with our residents as well.
Great. Thank you, guys.
right, so I want to offer the next question to Dr. Molly McLean. Dr. McLean is the program director at UNM. Dr. McLean, does the residency program feature a structured advising or mentoring initiative for incoming residents? And if in place, could you elaborate on the operational framework and mechanics of this program? Dr. McLean, you may be muted.
I am 100% muted, and I am driving in my car and trying not to kill myself or others, and figured it out. So no face, but I hope you all can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, because if you had to
Yes,
see
we
me,
can.
it would be like a lot of chins and my nostril hair. So I'm sparing everybody that. The answer to that excellent and complicated question is yes. We set up mentors throughout our faculty with all of our interns, and then it's really, I think, technically an advisor at first. I think mentor has a deeper meaning that we value, and sometimes the folks that our interns are assigned to become mentors, but for the first year, it's probably mostly just advising, kind of getting people's feet wet, getting a foundation under them, and really helping them with their individualized learning plan, helping them map out their next year. And then they are encouraged to either keep that person as their advisor / mentor, or find other, make other connections with other people who have more aligned professional goals. But they always have like at least one guaranteed person. And then folks are kind of welcome to create a support network as they feel necessary. I think Kathy might be better at talking about the mechanistics, but without going into so much detail that it would make it more confusing, we have standardized and set meetings that all the mentors and the residents kind of have to do throughout the year. We have at least 4 meetings a year. And then there's an additional meeting that the resident has assigned with either me, the program director, and that's in their first year. It's just like a check-in. We go over, the things that they and their mentor would have gone over. And then our associate program directors go over and meet with all the residents, I think in their second and third year. Is that right, Kathy? Or is it just the second year that you all meet with them?
It's just set up in the second year to kind of switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, but during that time, and it's also just because it's really nice to have a touch point with all the residents. We have 50 residents total in our program. And so it's just a real privilege for me personally. I know the APDs feel the same way. It's a real privilege to get just to connect with folks a little bit more individually and intimately, and really see how people are doing and see if there's anything that we can be doing to be more supportive. So I think probably some people feel like it's a lot of advising, but we really feel strongly that that's kind of our role is advisors, mentors, and coaches, and we all get faculty development on how to do that better. Because gosh, it's a very important privileged position, and we all need to get reminders on how to best do that. Anything else you want to add to that, Kathy?
And we actually just had a faculty development last night about what is it to mean to be coaching master adaptive learners, right? Which is the beyond the adult learners, but somebody who has to then pivot and kind of build upon those skills and learn, which is classic for residency and beyond. So.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone else want to add their own perspective?
I mean, again, we sort of copied what UNM did when we started our program. And so we have to some degree the same checklist. I think the thing that's a little bit different at our program is like we have like 1 million faculty and very few residents, because we sort of were running the hospital without a residency program for a long time and are, sort of perfectly comfortable doing that. So we have 2 residents and probably 30 people in the family medicine department on our staff. And so when the residents get here, they get like 3 months to just kind of get their feet wet. And then I ask them who they want to be their mentor. And at that point, they usually have an idea of which of the faculty they really click with. And the mentorship thing is like less about, right, advising specifically than kind of having more of a person that you can go to when you have questions or issues or concerns. Our residents also, at least the ones we have now, live on the same like housing compound as the rest of us do. And so like, they're your resident and like maybe you're in a mentorship role, but like also you play pickleball with them on Tuesdays, or like you have them over potluck or whatever. So the relationship is sort of more, I think, informal at our site, but it does allow people to get a little better sense of the faculty and to know the faculty a bit better, which I like. And then they can kind of pick the right mentor for them with that knowledge.
That's awesome. So this is the last question that we have before we open it up for Q&As with the students. I see Dr. Andazola here. He popped in for Dr. Gomez, so we'll give him this question. Dr. Andazola, in evaluating DO candidates, what is the program's perspective on the comparison between the U.S. medical licensing exam and the comprehensive osteopathic medical licensing exam scores? Is it mandatory for candidates to take both exams? And how does the program perceive the significance of students taking step 2?
Okay. Oh my God, my brain isn't smart enough to answer that question. I mean, basically, I consider MDs and DOs equivalent. And I think when I see their scores, I don't even know what that means. If you've passed, I think that's probably good enough for us. We don't really look at scores as much as we look at pass rates. And I think that's really important, but I would consider each equivalent. I don't I know the scores have different numbers. We don't even really look at that. And so I think that's really where we're coming from. Now, what was the step 2 question? I really didn't completely understand that. It was like, what was that, Leslie?
So the BCom students asked, how does the program perceive the significance of students taking step 2?
Is that I wish I could ask the person who asked the question. Step 2 is actually a requirement to participate in the matching program. And so you have to have taken step 2 and passed step 2 in order to participate in the matching program. And so I consider it very significant because it's part of the entrance criteria to be considered for a residency position. And that
Thank
goes
you.
across the board for all residency programs. So we there was several years ago a all-in policy that if you're participating in the match program, that you have to get all your residents through the match program. And so you can't really work outside that. And so we follow those rules.
And I think just to add on to what Dr. Andazola was saying, we have to take you off our list. We can't submit our list with somebody who hasn't passed step 2 because you won't be able to get a passing score in time. We can't get you licensed to work here, and so it's just, we just can't do it. So, but as far as the significance of passing step 2, the reason why we also weight that heavily in the fact of just like having passed it is because that's your clinical skills testing, right? That you can move on into the next stage of training and see those patients because you have that skill set that you have passed at that standard level. So it's not just the knowledge, but having trouble with that level 2 means that you'll probably will need a little bit more support, if you're having trouble passing step 2 or complex 2, level 2.
And there's actually a question or an example in the chat here.
Yeah, I'm reading it and I'm still not understanding it. I feel like I'm dense or something. But quite frankly, I think really, regardless if it's a step 1 or a complex level 1, and in combination with step 2 and complex level 2 or those mixtures, as long as those are passed, that would allow us to accept the resident. And I think that's really kind of where where our bottom pathway is, our bottom cutoff is. No, you don't have to take both. You can take just one or the other. So you can take the step one, you can take the step series or the COMLEX series, and both are considered appropriate. So if you pass step one and step two, or level one and level two, those are sufficient to enter the match process. So you don't have to take both.
I know for us, we don't care. We just want you to be able to get a license and have passed your exams.
Yeah, that's kind of us.
That's how it is at UNM as well. The scores themselves, it doesn't really factor into anything official. But you have to have two, and and being passed helps. It doesn't, you don't get cut off if you weren't able to pass the first time, step one, step two, level one, level two. But the scores matter less than passing.
All right, so with that, I think we will go ahead and move on to the Q&A portion. I can see we have someone already with their hand up. So Tracy Samaniego, please ask your question.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and meeting with us. So on the line of just DOs in general, since most of us are here from BRL, do you guys know what your current acceptance rates of DOs are currently, maybe as of this year, especially with the match that just came out?
Wow. I don't know. This year we got, I think, I want to look at my list, 30 or 40%. So because we have 10, we match 10. I think we have 3 or 4 DO students this year. As far as I'm concerned, our program exists to train physicians for Southern New Mexico, and we exist really for that reason. And we know that if you go to medical school and residency in the same community, you're more likely to stay and serve that community than if you just go to medical school there or if you just do residency there. And so if I could have all Burrell and all UNM students in my residency, I would be happy as heck. And so I think, we really look at that because we understand that that's a key ingredient to keeping doctors for our community. And so I think we look very highly at both of the medical schools and those students graduating from the schools.
Thank you. And then additionally, just because we're always I think our school is very heavy on like the osteopathic principles, and they kind of really try to train us in like, especially our bedside manner and everything like that. Have you noticed any like positive outcomes with having DO students in your programs, or kind of just like evidence of what we've been taught?
I'm going to answer one more, and then I'm going to take a break because I talk too much. And so I think the thing is that absolutely we have seen that. And I think it's sometimes intimidating because you guys know stuff that we don't, right? And so like, oh, I could do a quick release here, or I could do lymphatic flow here. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I think those are important things. And we have seen musculoskeletally students, graduates, or actually residents in our program that have been osteopaths to be more advanced in our non-osteopath students, specifically in that realm. And for us, and I know other programs are looking at that, we have dedicated that we want to get our osteopathic recognition, and we are actively working on that. And I know the internal medicine program at Mountain View has done the same thing. And so I think what we would like to do is create an osteopathic, consortium citywide that allows us to get that recognition. And I think that's a really important piece, so you don't lose those skills, and that you have the ability to continue to develop that.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I am Grace Flores. It's my pleasure to be here to listen to you guys. I hope to apply for the 2025 next March. So I live here in Alamogordo, and I don't know if for you guys important to be for the time step one, step two, and step three ready. It's really important to be all the step ready for my application.
No. So as long as you have 1 and 2, that's okay. New Mexico does have some rules about a full license regarding the timing of your test taking, but for your application to residency, just 1 and 2.
How much is important the volunteers activity for you? It's more important than research. I don't know, because sometimes many people, it's really important research for us to be a good CV for the application.
I think in general, I find that with family medicine, as long as you have all the eligibility to get licensed, like if we're talking like ECFMG certification, like you have that stuff. And some people find that if they're coming in, and there's going to be kind of a bigger learning curve hitting the ground in residency, that maybe getting some of the other big stuff out of the way first when you have the time for it helps. But research, I think overall in family medicine isn't as heavily like needed, weighted than seeing that we do so much community population health preventive medicine work, right? And that's like one of the kind of core values in family medicine. So seeing people spend the time there tends to be weighted heavier than bench research or but if there's research related to community and so forth, or some people are coming in, spending some time off clinical and doing research in the meantime and keeping kind of their mind engaged in that and maybe with communities, and that's also very that's helpful, right? It's just how you do it, what you're doing and how you do it.
Thank you so much.
If I may answer, I can't really see everybody because I'm on my phone and driving in a near-death type situation, but if it's okay if I answer, I think this is a really important question. I know a lot of people have questions about it. I think for family medicine, the programs are really so different. And I think there's real beauty in that. And I also think for applicants, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Like, how do you pick the program? How do you know if you're competitive or not for the program? And I think the answer that I have for both kind of the importance of research and the importance of volunteer experience is kind of the same. I think we know that residency is going to be tough no matter what. Wherever you go, it's going to be the only residency program probably that you've ever done, and it's going to be probably the hardest thing you've ever done. And so in order, I think, to maximize joy in residency and also, joy in our ability to teach, we really love to find people that share the same interests that we do. And that doesn't mean like creepily aligned or culty or anything like that, but it's really helpful for applicants to find a place that's going to give them the professional and personal support to be able to do the job that they want to do. And so I think more than worrying about how many research experiences or how many volunteer experiences, I think really this is going to sound cheesy, and maybe it is, but I think focusing on stuff that you're interested in rather than gearing your application to a certain program is going to help you find the program that is a better fit for you. I think it is very much like a relationship. Like, if you tailor yourself to attract a certain kind of person, like, it might work, but it's not going to be a good long-term solution. And I think the same thing is true for residency programs. So as long as you're engaged in stuff that you're interested in, whether it's research or volunteer stuff, the chances that you'll find a really good match for your residency is really high. And the chance that you'll be happy in that program and feel supported in that program and get the skills that you need are even higher if you focus more on what you find true in your heart to be like what you're passionate about, what you want to do. Because there are so many awesome programs out there in family medicine. And I think they really want to find people who will align with them and be, you know, feel like they got what they needed out of their residency training.
Thank you so much.
I think I have a sentiment that's probably shared among the program directors on here, but you all are amazing applicants, and it is just incredible to read about everything you've done, you've learned in all of your life experiences. And when I think about my own application, it just wouldn't compare. You guys are amazing.
Thank you for encourage us.
All right, I see we have a question from Mark.
I almost forgot to unmute. Sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule today. I appreciate it. I was wondering, what questions have you gotten from your residents that have applied to your program that really impressed you or stood out to you?
Mark, you asked what questions that we
Yeah.
received?
Yeah, something memorable that like your residents, applicants may have asked you or stood out during the application.
I can tell you which questions I don't like. I can tell you, like, you can get online, right? And you can find, like, ask these questions at the interview, right? And I get asked those questions every time. And so, and I think they're cool if they're genuine, right? So, like, do you anticipate any changes to the program in the next 5 years? Or what are you looking for in a candidate? And I always get those questions. And so they're pat questions, so I have pat answers. And I would love to have questions that are like more discussion driven, you know? Um, 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 I don't even know. I don't even know. Somebody needs to help me, one of the other program directors. So
I got one this year that I really enjoyed talking with. Like again, like it was a discussion because you know, everyone always asks the things that they shouldn't ask, like, you know, do you anticipate any changes? And, you know, or what's the thing that surprised you, you know, when joining the faculty or something like that. But it was a question asking me what was my experience as a woman of color in this institution since I joined. And I was like, you know, and I was like, well, first, thank you for considering me a person of color. And then, you know, and then going from there. But it was more of like I want to know you better and also your experience and understand, you know, the setting more from your experience. And so I felt like that was a really nice just discussion question.
absolutely. I like those ones. I've had another kind of magic wand question. Like, you know, if you had a magic wand or you could make one change to GME or one change to the medical system, you know, so a thoughtful question that makes me think. Those are fun. And I think it opens up dialogue because then I can always say, well, what would you do? You know, so those are good. Those are good questions. I like kind of a little bit of what follow a little bit with what Molly said, kind of, you know, kind of ask questions about what's important to you, what's in your heart. And I think that carries a lot of weight because when I feel like that question is something that is really important to you, I feel like that brings a lot of value to the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I think we'll go ahead and close it out. But before we do, we wanted to ask for final thoughts from our panelists.
Or advice.
I can go. We want you all to join family medicine, and we want you to find a program that teaches you to be the kind of doctor you want to be. So please look for that program. And you are amazing. Continue to do what you do and find the program that fits that. And if you want to spend time with us, let us know because we want to meet you.
kind of what I was going to say too, Nora, that I think a lot of the energy that people experience in where you are right now, like being a third-year medical student or being a fourth-year medical student, it feels more like you have to sell yourself. And I think it's a really hard energy to get out of because everyone around you is doing the same thing. Like, how can I be a good applicant? When I think a different question is, how can I get what I need out of a program? And I think if you have the long game in mind, if you have what you want out of your future, then figuring out what residency program you want, figuring out what experiences you want becomes a lot more like organic. And then the questions become more organic. Like everything about the process becomes more organic, because I think if you think about yourself as an applicant who is here to make yourself look good, then being a resident becomes very different. Being a doctor becomes very different. So I think if you are able to like get out of the energy that everybody else has around you, which is really hard to do, and say, what is my bigger purpose? What do I really want out of being a physician? What kind of physician do I want to be? And then you work backwards. What residency is going to give me that? Then I think then you put into play what Nora just said, the fact that you're all amazing. You don't have to sell yourself. You're going to find a great program that gives you what you want. Then I think it just might help you feel a little bit more steady, which you should feel like that's more accurate. The accuracy is this is your path and your life. And we are just here for a short time to help you get to that point. But I think if you have that end goal, that vision in mind, it kind of makes everything else kind of fall into place a little easier. Even though it's hard to believe.
I have to run. No, I totally believe that, Ollie. And I have to run, but I want to give my 2 cents and then I want to run away because I have to chair another meeting that started 2 minutes ago. But I agree with kind of a mixture of what Nora and Molly said. I think, I really, really believe that you guys went into medicine to save the world. I mean, I hope you did, and to make the world a better place and to contribute and to make a difference. And so that's the amazing part that Nora's talking about. And to follow in what Molly said is really be genuine to who you are. Don't forget your personal statement. Don't forget why you chose this path. And I think that's my advice. Don't forget that. Don't let anybody take you off track, because you can make a difference and you will be impactful. And we're there to help you do that. So just don't forget that. You're here to save the world, and we're all going to do it together. So anyways, I gotta go. Bye, guys.
Excellent. All right, so thank you very much to our panelists for joining us today. Thank you to our audience for joining us. Leslie, if they do want to follow up with our panelists, would they contact you? Is that how you want to do it?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. You could send me any questions you have and we'll get back to you.
And again, if you have any questions, please email Leslie L. Alba at nmpctc.org. And with that, we will close it out and have a great rest of your day.